Everybody, and welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Well, friends, as you all know, we look for those companies that have huge upside. And to have that big upside, many times you need large land holdings, and also you need to go where there is huge demand and not a lot of supply. And that are those commodities such as nickel and copper, where despite any short-term weakness, we certainly, when anybody looks at any type of long-term forecast, there is an enormous supply-demand imbalance. And that's why we are so glad today to be joined by David Datata of Strategic Energy, because David, right here, right now, as we are filming in September of 2023, is big game hunting. And here to talk all about it, David, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Hey, David, people back people as much as they back the companies. In a couple of minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My background is in analytical chemistry. So I started through a process of university degrees and research in R&D. And that kind of led me towards the mineral sector. Over here in Western Australia, every second company is a mineral exploration company. So it wasn't too long before I ended up getting the attention of a mineral exploration company, a junior, who were exactly looking to do that in a science-based approach to an R&D focus towards mineral exploration. And so nearly 10 years ago now, I was approached to review some projects and review some procedures that we're looking to implement on site. And from there, it just grew into a love of mineral exploration and getting involved in the game. So quickly moved into non-exec director positions and then project generation. We've been doing project generation nearly 10 years, and really that forms the basis of what SER is. We are a project generator. We look to take an alternative view to mineral exploration projects, mineral exploration regions, and really identify something that people may have overlooked or weren't even looking for in the first place. And that gives us that early advantage in getting in on ground, securing a project, and hopefully moving it through the exploration stages.
Yes. And talking about getting on ground and securing a project, your Kenobi project up in Queensland, it's a very large land holding. Can you just maybe give us an overview of it before we really get into what's happening in the here and the now?
Yeah, sure. So way back in 2016, the company identified a small high-grade exploration project, 150 kilometers north of Cloncurry. And from there, we slowly understood a bit more about the project. It's deep. It's a long way away from anything else. And what really drew our attention was the proximity to Ernest Henry. So it's 150 kilometers away from Ernest Henry. But at the time, it was surrounded by nobody. It was an area where anyone could pick up mineral exploration tenements. No one understood the greater region. But we took that as a view to open up a greater area and to try and get our hand on as much land as possible, knowing that the same rocks that host Ernest Henry, as they head undercover, held the Saxby project, which is now we've encapsulated 2,000 square meters, and we call that our Kenobi project.
Now, for those people that don't know, you said the Ernest Henry project, 150 kilometers away. 150 kilometers can sound like a big distance, but given your background, can you just explain why it is such a good tell for where your land is holding?
Absolutely. The Ernest Henry is located in the Gidia-Suture zone hanging wall. So what I mean by that is there's a large fault undercover that hosts that mineral deposit. And as you head north, 150 kilometers, the same package of rocks and the same fault system runs all the way up and through our tenement. And that was one of the reasons why we were drawn to the small scale high-grade deposit itself, or high-grade intersections at Saxby. And then took the view, well, if that area itself has gold, we know that Ernest Henry doesn't have gold, it's more copper focus, but the same package of rocks and the same sort of anomalies head all the way undercover. So it's worth taking a punt and securing a larger land region, knowing that there are a number of anomalies between Ernest Henry all the way up and through our package that are worth testing. The only problem is they're deep and they're expensive, but there's the potential there for the next Ernest Henry in that region.
Right. And you said they're deep and expensive, but in your case, David, you have somewhat solved that problem by bringing in a very, very well capitalized partner. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your Fortescue partnership?
Back middle of this year, I think it culminated nearly 18 months of talking back and forth with Fortescue about the potential of this project. It's no stranger to anyone that everyone knows that Fortescue are hunting new energy metals. They're hunting copper, and they're trying to take Greenfield's approach to exploration. They're building an exploration team around looking for something of Fortescue size. So they're looking for large projects. And so into discussions back and forth with Fortescue, they identified the region on there independently with the ability to host magnetite-based IOCGs, and that's exactly what Ernest Henry is. And they identified that there are a number of anomalies within our ground. We came to the same conclusion, obviously, but we got there first. And they've taken the view that each one of those anomalies that they've identified needs drill testing. So in entering into a joint venture with SER, we've put metrics involved in the joint venture. We've said over the 6 years, you've got to drill a minimum of 6,000 meters of basement. And to get around that issue we have with depth, each hole we're going approximately 1,000 meters, but the first 400 to 500 meters is what's known as cover. So it's loose sediment material. So we actually start the clock the moment we hit basement. So we're ensuring that we're having multiple chances of testing multiple magnetite-based anomalies across the project area, and it's all being paid for by Fortescue.
Right. Now, you just mentioned 1,000 meters down. That is quite deep drilling, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And again, it's quite unaccustomed for a junior to be able to say that that's their search base. But for us, that's exactly right. We think that if an anomaly can be seen at surface using existing geophysical techniques, and it's big enough at surface, then if it is mineralized when you hit it with a drill string, then surely there's got to be something worth chasing up. And that's the elephant country we're searching in, not just at Kenobi, but some of our other projects in northwest Queensland. We take the view that if you can see it and it sticks out at surface, then it's worth putting a hole into it.
Yes, and speaking of big game hunting, let's face it, a company of Fortescue's size, they don't want to do something just to make a little discovery, do they? They also need to have something that's meaningful and scalable to the size of their existing companies. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. They're not wasting their time in partnering with SER and looking for small scale deposits or anything that isn't going to substantiate a tier one style. So that's the anomalies they're targeting. As I said, we independently came up with our own modeling to suggest a number of targets in the back and forth of discussions. And they've come very quickly the moment we signed the joint venture with their list of targets. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're starting with their first target that we can get to. And I'm happy to say that drilling's already commenced on the first target. And we'll just see how this plays out.
Right. Okay. So we're into it. The first target, it's being drilled right now. As I said, we're in the late September of 2023. When should the results come out, and what would be the follow-up afterwards?
Well, as part of the first year's exploration campaign, the first hole is a nickel target. And part of the SER's approach to exploration is we target these frontier regions because we know that governments in general are trying to open up new frontiers. So we've managed to attract a $250,000 grant to drill this first hole, this nickel hole, which is quite great for us. Yes, it's even better. It's fallen into the joint venture for FMG. But so that hole is currently underway. Yeah, that's just the way the game is. Yeah, so the first hole is currently underway at the moment. Each hole we're between 3 and 4 weeks to drill, and then we move on to the next one and keep going. So we have 4 targets and 4,000 meters of drilling planned for this field season, and we're hoping that we can fast forward that by possibly getting a second rig up there. As I said, we're going wherever Fortescue have identified. They're paying the bills and they're pointing us in the direction of the largest targets and the most accessible first up. So following on from this nickel target, we'll hit IOCG target number 2, and then we'll keep going until either we run out of time because the weather changes, but we certainly won't run out of targets.
Right. And David, it's a little bit unusual to have the Fortescue people or the right on site with you. How is that helping you as far as just manpower and information on the ground?
Well, it all started with the targeting approach. We had a level of geophysics that we applied to all of our projects that we thought we were pretty good at, actually. But then FMG have come in and put their own layer on top, done some fantastic modeling, given us a whole range of targets that we wouldn't have even considered because of their depth, but their geometry and their size are definitely worth drill testing. But we're at a $5 million market cap at the moment. Yeah, each hole can be anywhere 300 to 400,000. So to have FMG's knowledge and funding, it's fantastic. And then when it gets to on ground, SER is an operator, which means we do a lot of the busy work in making sure that native title's sorted, landholder agreements are sorted. But FMG now contributing staff as well to help us with the more mundane tasks, logging and viewing the core as it comes out of the ground. So we've actually had a force multiplier effect in that we're not just operating, but they're actually walking with us. Because FMG hold more than just a JV with us at Kenobi. They hold projects in their own right up near
Okay.
our other projects as well in North Queensland. So it's an opportunity for them to build their skill set into the region. They have a large footprint in Northwest Queensland, and I think if anyone looked at the tenement map across the region, you'd find that they are growing more and more in their land banking, and they're looking to explore as much as they can in search of copper.
Right. And so it's copper and nickel. Are those the primary commodities that people that you and Fortescue are looking for?
Yeah, our view moved from ISCG to nickel when we drilled some results in 2021 on the project. And we certainly got the funding from the government, Queensland government, to go back and test that nickel target. But FMG's target is copper. They're IOCG hunting in this region, and all the tenements in Queensland are all of the same copper targets. The nickel theme, I think, is an added bonus because we've got the government to pay for the first 250K of that one.
Right. And is the copper, is it more a function that the geology suggests that there's a lot of copper there, or is it more of a, hey, listen, we think the copper is the commodity of the next 10 years type of discussion?
Speaking for Fortescue, I think copper is on their target commodity list, and they see that you can't go and get the next Ernest Henry without searching deeper and undercover, and you can't do that without hitting magnetic anomalies, which is there's a whole host of them on our ground, which is, as I said, following the same structures that host Ernest Henry. So we think that they're taking the model of Ernest Henry, same as what we were doing, and trying to see undercover whether or not the next one exists.
Right. So certainly a very, very exciting time for the company. Also, for people that aren't familiar, is there a seasonality element of drilling up there, or is there a wet season or any type of force majeures that are who we should be aware of?
It does get very wet and very hot up in Northwest Queensland. Around mid-November is the time you need to get out of there before the rains come in. Yeah, that's right. So you're April to November is the season. But the structure of the joint venture allows us to spend that downtime when we can't get out on ground to define the geophysical program that's needed and the targets for the next season. So we're very early into it. We only signed this agreement middle of the year and quickly did a capital raise off the back of it to fund our other projects, but to also allow investors to come in on the upside of this joint venture. But we see that we spent 6 months doing the targeting, reprocessing all the work from the previous year, going on ground, drilling, and just using as much as we can of the drill season to get as many targets done. We would have loved to have started a few months earlier, but it was up to the two companies to finally bash out an agreement that allows us to start as soon as possible.
Yes, and in the meantime, having 4 targets, as you said, between now and end of the year, that's certainly plenty to chew on, right?
It is. It's absolutely. And drilling never goes smoothly, and there'll always be bumps and there'll always be curveballs that we're never going to see. And we're hoping we can either have some good luck with drilling, or we can maybe attract a second rig or do something to try and make sure we hit those targets as much as possible, because we're not actually limited now by funds. We have the funds there. They're incorporated as part of the joint venture. The metrics don't start until we hit the meters in basement. So there's every incentive for both companies to drill as many meters on as many fresh targets as we can.
Right. And David, also, one of the other anecdotally issues we're hearing up in Queensland is getting access to rigs. Is the fact that you're going deep and also fully funded, is that a big advantage over some other companies?
Yes, for the drilling companies do like working with majors, and there's an opportunity to get their foot in the door. So the drilling contract we're using, DH1, are working with us now. They've been fantastic. We're hopefully that they'll find another rig for us to operate up there, which would be even better. Shout out to DDH1. But we're going into these agreements with geophysical contractors or drilling contractors, not as a $5 million market cap anymore. We're going in as a joint venture partner with a Fortescue. So the dynamics change and the conversations change because we have a bit more stick, because they know that if the job is done right and done properly this year, we've got another 3, 4, 5 years post this into the joint venture, and everyone wants repeat business. So there's a lot of companies scrambling to do more than just iron ore, to do long, deep holes, which is what we're trying to do here. 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters is a long way down. And a lot of time I'm sitting over a rig.
Wow. It sounds fantastic. And as I said, also we are hearing anecdotally that it is extremely challenging right now in Queensland to get access to these rigs. So you're certainly well placed from that. Hey, David, what would be your idea of success for the drilling up there?
From an absolute base case is we drill our 4 targets this year to depth.
Okay.
That would be outstanding, because we are trying to prove ourselves as an operator with the big brother in the room as well. So we want to make sure that confidence can be built on both sides, and then we can come back next year and next year. Now, in terms of success, everyone would love a discovery hole. What that looks like.
I've never heard anyone say they don't.
Oh, that's right, and that's what we're here for. And both parties are invested to do exactly that. And that's to say what would be the best case scenario. Well, another Ernest Henry would be fantastic, but drilling also comes with risks, and exploration comes with risks. But an incident-free drill program where we get to the end of the program and we can look back and learn from it, and then either come back and test the targets again using a different geometry or a different way of testing them, or finding new targets. If we were in this program, if we were the best case scenario to turn around and say, well, we need to go back to each one of these targets because there's more to drill, that'd be a fantastic outcome.
That's a high-grade problem, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But both parties are determined to test as many anomalies as we can, because if you drill one and it's fantastic and you stay there, you then pass up an opportunity for one that might exist somewhere else. We're not in that junior thinking anymore where we have to keep putting intersections into the same target to prove to the market how big the target is. You take the FMG approach. You say, well, if I've got unlimited budget, then let's try all the targets, because I want to know which one is the very best, and I don't have to worry about what the market says. And that's one of those things that we're going to have to struggle with should we get some success.
Hey, David, we have to keep these interviews short, but we're certainly going to follow up with you post results. But in closing, what would you like everybody to know, 1 or 2 points about Strategic?
Strategic by nature is a project generator. And this is the best example of what SER's strategy is: identifying greenfields regions, uncovering the potential of the region, bringing in a major who can take it through to production. And the Kenobi project is just one of a number of projects that we have. We have another project 150 kilometers northeast of this one where we're trying to do exactly the same. We're ring fenced by FMG. We're trying to put holes or into the ground or geophysics across the top of it to understand it, to hopefully bring in the next one. Because we know that drilling and exploration has a low chance of success, but if you've got a major that's paying the large, expensive bills, you've got more chance of success.
Right. Hey, David, thank you, and we'll certainly be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.